Fox Sports Radio, the Mike North Show, XM 142, north-to-north.com, and ORTHTONORTH.com. And don't forget, you'll be able to hear this interview not only on the interview page at north-to-north.com, but you'll also be able to hear it, of course, on foxsportsradio.com. And believe me, folks, when I tell you we get the best interviews, we had Jeremy Roenick last week. We got one of the all-time greats. Basically, forgotten man sometimes when you talk about the Green Bay Packers. He is the only Packer quarterback to ever win 2 Super Bowls. He's the most successful Packer quarterback. Is everybody hearing me? Because I want everybody to know this. We're pleased to have with us one of the all-time greats, Bart Starr. How you doing, Bart?
Well, I'm doing super. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Bart. And by the way, I saw the documentary on Lombardi. I loved every minute of it. I loved your contribution of it. I still have trouble believing that when you went over to the sideline, even as tense as that game was, maybe Lombardi made you chuckle, but you went back to the huddle, you said, in the documentary, right before the big play, when your quarterback sneaked at the Ice Bowl between Jerry Kramer and Highland, and you went back laughing, basically. Tell us a little bit more in depth about that.
Well, that was one of our lead plays on short yardage because the Cowboys had developed a very, very strong defensive technique that year, and we had labeled it the submarine technique, that their defensive linemen went so low on their charge on the snap of the ball that they were underneath your linemen. Our linemen, could not knock them back. All he could do is fall on them, except for Jethro Pugh, who was an outstanding defensive tackle, by the way. But he was so tall, he couldn't get down that low. And we had seen that preparing for the game, and then we'd run it a couple other times in the game. So we knew the play would work. And so what we had done was to call it and hand it off to one of the backs following. By the way, everybody leaves out Ken Bowman, the center, because he and Jerry Kramer were the ones that with a piece for the wedge play.
Yeah, I said Bob Highland, and it's Ken Bowman. And Ken Bowman, you're right, was very important in that play. And you're right, he does get forgotten. But
anyway, we had called the play. We called it twice, and knowing it would work. But the backs, because the ground was so hard, it was hard as the desk I'm tapping on. They were slipping and sliding and could only get back out to the line of scrimmage. So I took a timeout and I asked the lineman, "Can you get your footing for one more wedge play?" And they said yes. So I ran to the sidelines and I told Coach Lombardi that there was nothing wrong with the play with the backs. The linemen could get their footing, but I said the backs, in an attempt to get started from a down position, you know how the backs line up.
Sure.
I said they were slipping and sliding and couldn't get back much more than just to the line of scrimmage. I said, "Coach, I'm upright. I can shuffle my feet and just lunge in." And that's when he, on the sideline, said, "Well, then run it and let's get the hell out of here." And that's just how he said it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bart, and you know what? It was a great, great documentary. And what I found interesting is everybody thinks that Vince Lombardi was a control freak, but they show you, Forrest Craig, and Jerry Kramer discussing how that play is going to go. And basically Vince Lombardi, in his own words, says, I wasn't the be-all, end-all. I depended and leaned on my players. And that's exactly what happened in that situation. He had to give the okay, but you guys knew it would work. And you, Forrest and Jerry, really set this thing up, didn't you?
Well, we had talked about it, but now, see, again, in your discussion, you're leaving Ken Bowman out of there.
Yeah, you're right, but, Ken Bowman wasn't brought up in that documentary either.
Well, I know that. And that's what was so disgusting to me, is that he has been left out of this critical play all of the time. And with no disrespect, Jerry Kramer was a fabulous guard, no question about it. But he did not do that work by himself. He had to have Ken Bowman helping him on Jethro Pugh.
And it's good that, as the quarterback, that you bring that up because it has been like the Jerry Kramer show with the books and everything else, and nothing against Jerry. He was tremendous, but you're right. Everybody should get the credit. I want to talk to you about 1963. Well, with Bart Starr, all-time great quarterback, Hall of Fame with the Green Bay Packers. The 63 season, for the most part, was glossed over. And I couldn't decide whether they wanted to make Lombardi seem like a saint as a coach, but there were flaws. And Paul Hornung got caught or was basically told that there had been gambling issues, and he was out. It's my contention the Chicago Bears, and I live here in Chicago, and I've lived here my whole life, won in 63 because you lost one of the most valuable pieces, not only of the Green Bay Packers, but of the National Football League. A man that could kick, a man that could throw, a man that could put up 170 points. And I believe if Paul Hornung plays that year, you guys win, and you beat out the Bears. And I'm a Bear fan. Instead, the Bears went on to win the championship. Were you puzzled by the fact that 63 was glossed over?
No, I think you have to recognize that the Bears deserved to win that year. They played better than we did, and they should have gone. But obviously, missing a person like Hornung is a tremendous loss, and it definitely affected us.
You know what, Bart? When you watched the Brett Favre fiasco, you were an understated guy. Vince Lombardi came to Green Bay, saw you. You and him seemed to be on the same page most of the time. You had a good rapport, it seems like, especially after the first time that he yelled at you and you told him, don't do that again if you want me to lead this football team, Coach, and he never did. Give me your impression of Brett Favre and the Brett Favre fiasco, especially last couple of years. Talented quarterback, great quarterback, that's unmistakable, a warrior and stuff like that. But did it get tiresome with you, or what did you think about that as a former quarterback in that organization?
Well, I regrettably was disappointed at what had happened the last couple of years, because there's no question the guy was a fabulous player, unbelievable. My biggest disappointment was what was happening in and around the game, the season, and so forth, that I think took that gloss away from it. That was my biggest disappointment. And
do you know Brett? I'm sure you've talked to him when you went back to Green Bay and stuff like that. You've talked to Brett Favre, I'm sure, a couple times at least, haven't you? Have you guys had some sort of, I know you have a mutual respect. Did you have any camaraderie at all?
Yes, we did. My wife, Cherry, and I had the pleasure of getting to know Brett and Deanna, and spending some time with them on a couple of charitable functions. We've been down to their home in near the Hattiesburg area in Mississippi. So, yes, we've gotten to know them very well.
And have you talked to them? Did you talk to them in the past year, or did you just basically say, that's not my deal, I'm just going to watch from afar?
Well, I haven't, in the time that he left Green Bay and went east, and then, of course, came back to Minnesota and so forth. I just sort of stayed out of that, and so we had not. But prior to that, we had gotten to know them quite well.
I got to ask you about the fraternity of players with the Jay Cutler situation. I think it's a very dangerous thing to be a player, and this tweeting, whatever it is very, very dangerous, and you get... I think the players at home that sit out playoff games become fans, and their reactions, they can't, instead of opening their mouth now, they can get on a keyboard and really make themselves look foolish at times. And what's your take on the Jay Cutler situation? Here's a guy that got sacked 60 times, didn't miss a game, kept on ticking.
I don't really have a comment because I don't know enough about it from being close to it, so to speak, close in quotes to it. And so I'd rather not comment because I just don't know.
But it does strike you that this group of players is going to go up in a lockout against these owners. And it used to be a tight-knit fraternity where nobody talked out of school. And you didn't see this happen in the 60s, 70s. Sure, social networking is big now, Bart, but it just seems to me that it's gotten a little bit out of hand, and it does cause friction, I think, now within the players.
Well, it's certainly possible it could, but again, I've been so long removed from it that I don't attempt to get inside, in quotes, again, with that. And so I'll be an outsider like everybody else, sitting out here reading and listening and seeing what's happening.
Spoken like an old school player. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers if we can. This kid playing indoors was unbelievable against Atlanta. He struggled a little bit last week. I mean, the Bears basically only gave up 14 points, where the week before they were fashioning the Hall of Fame bus for Aaron Rodgers, who won his first playoff game. But there's no doubt the upside is huge, and we got a great Super Bowl brewing up. How do you see the Steelers and the Packers in this Super Bowl?
I think it's going to be a great game, and I'm glad you brought up Aaron because this young man is absolutely fabulous. I don't know when I've ever seen anybody any better in critical times than this guy. He is unreal. We love watching him play.
You know what's funny? When you say, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody in more critical times, I start thinking about 5 or 6 quarterbacks, and I thought of Unitas. I thought of you. I thought of Namath. There's been some critical times, but as far as a season goes, and losing players, and having no running game at times, the defense having issues in the middle of the season a little bit, I think I knew that Green Bay had a shot when they went to New York and beat the Jets 9-0. I can't think of many teams that would go to a Super Bowl that were shut out at home. And Green Bay, I think they first got my attention big time, Bart, in a low-scoring game, 9-0, by going to New York.
I have to agree with you. I think it was a heck of an effort.
It was a heck of an effort. What are you doing now, Bart? What do you got going now?
Well, basically, I'm semi-retired, but I do a lot of work with our son here. We have a company called Starr Enterprises, which is basically built around an investment firm, which Bart owns. And so I do a lot of work there. I spend a lot of time working with the Rawhide Boys Ranch, which is our all-time favorite charity. We've been with them for 45 years. And it's a boys' home up in Wisconsin, west of Green Bay, about 40 miles. And it is a fabulous, fabulous experience to be involved with them because they're rehabbing youngsters. They're young men who are just as close to jail as you can possibly get many times when they come there. And the work they've done over the years is absolutely incredible. And so we're so proud of what they've been able to do rehabbing these kids. We had a homecoming a couple of years ago, and I can't tell you how touching it was in the field house there, which, by the way, was donated by a person because of the work they're doing. But we had about eight or nine military people come back. I think 3 or 4 of them, or 4 or 5 of them, were officers, and that had been their background, and they'd gone on to be officers in the military. And when they spoke, there wasn't a dry eye in that field house on that campus.
You know what, Bart? This is very tough for me, and I've been interviewing people. I've interviewed over 15,000 people over 20 years, but it always doesn't get easy to ask a father or mother this question. You did lose a son years back, and I'm sure that part of the reason you're involved in all this is because of the memory of your son, and I know it stays with you every day. And has this helped become somewhat of a healing thing to be involved with this type of situation?
Well, it does, because you have a direct input on the ranch, its leadership. We have John Solberg as a leader there, and he and his team have done an outstanding job. And where these youngsters were not part of a family, and on that ranch, they grow up in a family because we have houses there which are family-driven. Mom and Dad are the ones who are in charge of that house, and so these kids get to grow up in an atmosphere they'd never had exposure to, or pitifully exposed to.
Well, that's outstanding. And by the way, we're with Bart Starr, former great quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. 2 Super Bowls, the first 2 Super Bowls. To me, the first Super Bowl, the pressure had to be immense for your ball club. As good as you guys were, when the commissioner of the NFL, when the owners of the NFL, when other players in the National Football League are saying to Bart Starr and to Vince Lombardi and to whoever will listen from Green Bay, we need you to win this game for the honor of our league, and to show that everybody that the established NFL is the football league. How much pressure was it on you guys to win that first game?
Well, it was a great deal, and it was interesting because you made a good point there. And Coach Lombardi's opening meeting with us, our initial meeting after we had arrived out there, to show you how what quality and how smart this man was. In his initial meeting with us, he talked about how great the Kansas City Chiefs were. He said they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster than we are. And he said, this is going to be a fight. And that's how he opened the meeting.
That's good.
And he was absolutely correct, because the Chiefs were just an exceptional team. They were the only team, to my knowledge, at that time, that had a strength training program in their system. No one else had it. No one.
So if Kansas City, okay, you guys beat them, I believe the score, I get my scores mixed up between the first and second. Was the Oakland game 35-10 or the Kansas City game? I'm trying to remember. 35-10. Well, anyway, you won the game.
Kansas City was the opening game. Was the one that was the first Super Bowl type game.
And you know what? Now, nowadays, I mean, people look over that, but you know what? I mean, I don't know what happens to the merger if the AFL wins the first game. That being said, I want to talk about the Bear rivalry before we let you go. I know Doug Buffon. I know Gale Sayers. I know Mike Ditka. They're all friends of mine. The rivalry can never be, as I don't believe, intense as it was back then, because you had the same players every single year on every team. This was before free agency. Now, you guys respected each other, and you guys, maybe some of the players hung out together after games, but as brutal a rivalry as ever come. And I believe the fact that you guys had the same teams every single year just added to it.
Well, there's no question about it. It was a great rivalry, and I'm delighted you mentioned a couple of names that you did, because it was a joy to get to know Gale and Mike over the years. And Mike and I have really gotten to know each other well through the years with the different efforts and so forth. And I just have had immense respect for the Bears for a lifetime, so to speak, because from the time I began playing until we retired, and then many, many years after that, it's just been a joy to be identified with a group, the Packers, when they're playing the Bears, and or to be at a social function or something at another time in the year, because the Bears are a great organization.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bart, you brought back a lot of great memories. And when, as kids growing up, it was a fan thing between, oh, we don't like Green Bay, we don't like the Bears, but we always had the ultimate respect. To this day, as kids, we could name the whole lineup, defensively and offensively, of the Green Bay Packers, because we knew if the Chicago Bears were going to taste the title like they did in '63, we had to get over a great quarterback, a great team of all pros, and a ton of Hall of Famers. Bart, we greatly, greatly appreciate it, my friend.
Well, your kind words are deeply appreciated. It's a great joy to be on with you, and I wish you well.
Thank you. Hey, you take good care of yourself. The same to you and your lovely family.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you.
You too. That's Bart Starr, Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the classiest guys to ever lace them up here on Fox Sports Radio. I hope I didn't say Brett Starr, but it's very, very, very tough to say Brett Bart for a guy that's mentally challenged like myself. Back one more.